Good. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to do this. It was a great opportunity to learn a lot more about BIFHSGO. But I have to admit that when I was first asked, I went, why me? I'm a relative newcomer to BIFHSGO and certainly in no position to talk about the last 25 years. Then I realized it was just like family tree research. I don't know my ancestors either, but I do know where to look for information and I know the questions to ask. So that's what I did. I talked to a lot of current and former BIFHSGO members. I consulted the ACR archives online, and if you haven't looked at them, it's really worth looking back at what we have written over the last 25 years. It was an interesting experience. I was also provided with lots of pictures from other presentations and events that had taken place. And this allowed me to build up a story, and the story is just like a family. It's full of surprises, there are family resemblances, and it's also a reflection of a maturing family. The first thing that really surprised me, and I don't know if you know this, I'm hoping somebody out there doesn't know this because it's an interesting story, so I'm going to tell you anyway, that BIFHSGO grew out of a dissatisfaction with OGS. It began with a 1988 decision to require all OGS branch members to also belong to and pay dues to the provincial organization. There was concern that this left the branches with a lot less autonomy than they would otherwise have had. And in the case of Ottawa, it limited the ability to do two things. One was to look particularly at British Isles research, and the secondly was, since by definition OGS is an Ontario organization, it excluded the particularly Anglophone British descendants who lived on the Quebec side of the river. So there was a group of unhappy Ottawa branch members who started looking at alternatives. And at one point, the alternative was called the Friends of Family Research in the National Capital. In 1993, Don Whiteside wrote a proposal on behalf of what was then coalescing as a group called the Terrible 10. This proposal was put to OGS. It didn't get a lot of support and in the end was defeated by the OGS board. The proposal would have been for more local branch autonomy. Sadly, Don Whiteside died in 1993 and the leadership of the Terrible 10 was taken over by Jack Moody. Then things moved fairly quickly. In June 1994, there was a proposal for the creation of the British Isles Family History Society of Greater Ottawa. And another did you know, this surprised me, the name came from the British Isles Family History Society of Los Angeles, which was created in just 6 years earlier. And I believe somebody had traveled to California and just happened to discover this group and came up with the name for BIFHSGO. So now you see the significance of our name. The British Isles, because of our focus on British Isles history, obviously, and Greater Ottawa to include researchers on both sides of the Ottawa River. Understand that the tentative term national capital was rejected because it sounded too much like a federal government institution. And then the pace picked up. In October of 1994, there was a meeting held to set up the structure and choose the officers for BIFHSGO. In November, the application was signed to incorporate. And then on the 9th of January 1995, the first meeting of the board was held and the bylaws were approved. I have to say in passing that this reflects a speed of incorporation at the federal government level that I doubt they've maintained to this day, because that was pretty remarkable, November to January. And then less than a week later, 6 days later, the first monthly meeting was held, and the first issue of ACR was distributed at that meeting. And then the first conference was held in September of that year. Now, they had planned, apparently, attendance at the first meeting, the one in January, for 50 people. And when the meeting was called to order, they estimate there were at least 150 people in the room. I have no idea how many copies of ACR they printed, but that might have been a bit of a challenge. From the beginning, there were a number of things which we still see in BIFHSGO today. 10 meetings a year on the second Saturday of the month, with speakers and discovery tables, 4 issues of ACR a year, and fall conferences with the alternating themes of England, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. So in some ways, BIFHSGO looks now a lot like it did 25 years ago. The other did you know that I didn't realize this, was that ACR has won multiple awards from the National Genealogical Society between 1998 and 2011, winning the first prize several times. Then I gather they stopped submitting the journal to the competition so they could give others a chance to win. There are a number of other features of BIFHSGO that have been with us from the beginning, although some of them have evolved over time. One is the library, which I understand began in the very early years. The library was a box of books that was lugged from meeting to meeting. A formal library was established in 1997 when the BIFHSGO was meeting at the Family History Center. It moved to the Legion in 1998 and there was a dedicated Brian O'Regan Memorial Library in the year 2000. The library began with major gifts from Jack Moody and the estate of Brian O'Regan. It moved to the City Archives in 2002, and then it followed the archives from Sussex Drive to Tallwood Avenue. And as you probably know, in 2016, the library was integrated with the Library Connect collection from the Ottawa branch of OGS and is still located on Tallwood Avenue. But times were changing, and I just want to read a short extract from an article that Bob Dawes wrote in the ACR in the fall of 1998. Most people are reluctant to use personal computers to assist them with their genealogical or family history studies. The benefits are tremendous. Just about any vintage computer will do. The fear of technology shouldn't stop you from trying to use one. How things have changed in the last 20 years. BIFHSGO has had to adapt to this changing environment. Bob Dawes has actually reflected on those changes over the last 20 years in an article in the most recent ACR, which is interesting to look back on what he says now after a series of 3 articles that he wrote in 1998. I did a quick scan of the ACR articles, and it looks to me as though in the early years there was a lot more focus on sources of data and what was included in specific data sets so that it would help people go out and find information. In later years, the ACR has much more been about the stories from the research because the research is so much easier to access now, with footnote references to the sources. We've also seen the creation of the BIFHSGO website. We've seen the increased availability of information on the members-only page of our website, and we've seen the addition of the e-newsletter. So we've adapted to that changing technology. What also has changed? The society became more professional and more mature. You'll see that our logo and ACR formats have changed from what looks like a very, tentative logo in the first years to something that looks extraordinarily professional now. In 1997, the great moments were added as a regular feature of our meetings, first in December and then, essentially by popular demand, added in June as well. In 1999, the Hall of Fame was set up to celebrate BIFHSGO's 5th anniversary, and in the first year, 5 members were nominated. It now includes 34 members who have been honored for their significant contribution to genealogy and family history research. In about 2002, BIFHSGO began offering courses. In 2007-08, these before BIFHSGO presentations were added to the lineup. There were also some changes made to add to the social aspects of our meeting, name tags, which were an addition after the beginning of the meetings, and occasional coffee times. Something that has obviously changed over the years has been the meeting locations. We met the first few years at the Family History Center, then we moved to the Legion's Montgomery branch on Kent Street. In 2005, we moved to Library and Archives Canada, which really seems like a very natural partnership for BIFHSGO. I heard some story about sharing, or was it stealing, of BIFHSGO's Timbits that somehow contributed to the merger of Library Canada and Archives Canada. It sounds like a very Canadian thing to happen, but I'm not sure of the facts. I couldn't do a fact checker, so it all may be fake news, but I leave it with you. That's what I got. And then since 2015, we've obviously been at Ben Franklin Place. Until the latest move to Ben Franklin Place, which was done for financial reasons, the moves usually happened because of the need for more space. Membership was growing. In the first year, there were 269 members, which is an amazing number for a new organization. The founding members, I was told, drew lots for their first membership number. As you know, you have a membership number that follows sequentially over the years. And Fern Small, who was the only female on the founding board of directors, was number 1, of course. But then I just heard this morning that it wasn't by drawing lots, that the gentlemen got together and decided that she could be number 1. So again, I can't fact check, so it might all be fake news, but One way or the other, Fern ended up as number 1. Although the membership grew rapidly in the early years, it's been more stable in the past few years. Over the last 7 years, the membership, which includes individuals, families, and organizations, has been in the 500 to 550 range. We've had a total of 1,971 members since the beginning. Many have come and gone. But 16 of the original 100 first members are still members now, and some are still active in the society. Your board of directors has changed. This is your founding board. This is today's board. There's a changing gender balance. We have, yes, it's in color too. That's a technology change. We've also added the special interest groups to the lineup at BIFHSGO. The Irish group began at OGS long before BIFHSGO began, and it's still a joint group. The Scottish group began at OGS probably in about 1994, but became dormant and was revived at BIFHSGO in about 2009-10. The writing group, which is the truly first BIFHSGO SIG, began at about 2002-2003. And then the DNA group began in about 2007, obviously in response to the emerging interest in DNA to support genealogy. And the latest SIG is the British Colonial America group, which began last November. So we're still growing. BIFHSGO also, as a sign of a maturing organization, became more involved in partnerships with other genealogy groups and with the local history and heritage organizations. You may have seen BIFHSGO at the St. Patrick's Day Parade. You may even have marched. Or you celebrated Hogmanay with the Scottish Society. No discussion of the history of BIFHSGO would be complete without a reflection on our research accomplishments, how they have grown over the years. Research and sharing results has always been a focus of the Society. It's included in the object of the patent that established the organization, and the current objective says to preserve, research, and disseminate Canadian and British Isles family and social history for the benefit of current and future generations. We have undertaken many research projects to transcribe information and make it available to the genealogy community. There's a long list of this research on our website. I've just put some examples here that I just picked up, and of course I had to choose the first Canadian Casualty Clearing Station as well. But clearly no discussion of our research initiatives would be complete without talking about home children. And there's another surprise I had not realized, that the work on the home children began when Dave Laurenti, who was the founder of the Home Children Canada in 1991, spoke at a BIFHSGO conference in the early years and indicated the need for a searchable home child database. BIFHSGO and OGS took up the challenge. In 1995, volunteers began transcribing ship's passenger records held at Library Canada. In 1996, there was an agreement with LAC that it would host the home child database, and BIFHSGO would provide the volunteers for the transcriptions. This was formalized in an MOU in 2006. Since then, hundreds of BIFHSGO volunteers have indexed records from various sources, all under the long-term and dedicated leadership of John Sayers and Patricia Roberts-Pichette. Over the years, the list of sources of information on home children has expanded to include the magazines from the Bernardo Society, Middlemore's Children's Immigration Homes, and the Fagan Homes. And in 2003, there was an agreement with Home Children Canada that BIFHSGO would begin responding to the queries about home children and requests for information. And I can tell you, as the person who receives a lot of the queries that come in by voicemail and email, we get a lot of requests for information on home children. Everything from, can you find my grandfather, to very specific questions about material that's appearing on our website that people have researched. And I know that not all the requests that we receive come through the queries, so I can just imagine the volume of requests that John and Patricia have to answer. In addition to responding to queries and looking at information on our website, we also published a book of stories from home children, British home children, their stories. All this is possible because of the work of a lot of volunteers. It began with the hard work, commitment to quality, and enthusiasm of the founding members. The tradition continues, And we can thank not only the current and past board members and other leaders in the Society, but also the hundreds of volunteers who have helped with research projects, ACR, conferences, monthly meetings, and all sorts of other jobs that have been done. BIFHSGO wouldn't exist without them. And it's allowed BIFHSGO to retain the best parts of what the founding members left us, to adapt to the changing environment around us, and to mature as a society. And it is what we have accomplished over the last 25 years. I would like to express my personal thanks to these people who helped me put together this presentation, because as it was said at the beginning, I don't have the history myself, and I relied on a lot of people to provide me with information. They agreed to be interviewed, they provided me with documents, they gave me access to photographs, and so on. And I apologize if I've forgotten anybody. I have a feeling I have. I remember two in the middle of the night last night. But I really do appreciate the assistance that they have provided and the opportunity to talk to them about their memories of BIFHSGO going back 25 years. I'm happy to take questions, although I'm really hoping there are people out there in the audience who are going to be able to answer them. And also to put forward any additions that you have to the story, or correct the facts that are wrong. And as you think of your questions, I'll leave you with the faces of some of those volunteers.